We'll get the clock situation straight. Okay, I have 9:30.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I will call to order the regular board meeting of the Western Municipal Water District. Madam Secretary, would you please read in the protocols and call the roll?
Thank you. Good morning. Pursuant to Western Municipal Water District Resolution 3272, in an effort to protect the public health, prevent the spread of COVID-19, and because state and local officials are recommending measures to promote social distancing, the public may view this board meeting virtually, via Zoom, and in person. This meeting is being live streamed at WMWD.com and will be video recorded for on-demand viewing and broadcasting purposes. As stated on the agenda, members of the public who wish to comment on any item on the agenda may make comments in person, virtually via Zoom, or by submitting comments on the district's website. Comments received on the district's website before 4:30 p.m. February 14th, 2023 will be made part of the board meeting record. For those participating in the Zoom meeting who wish to provide public comments, please indicate such by using the raise hand feature, and we will call on you individually. For those participating by telephone who wish to provide public comment, you may do so by pressing *6 to unmute yourself and *9 to activate the raise hand feature. If there is more than one caller, you will be identified and called on one at a time. Any public comment will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. However, the presiding officer reserves the right to reduce the amount of time you will be allowed to speak to ensure that all members of the public have an opportunity to provide their comment. I will now take roll call for the meeting. Due to the complexity of conducting this meeting by Zoom and telephonically, I will not be taking roll call for staff members or the public at this time. Director Torres.
Here. I'm jumping on camera now. I'm trying to get my computer up, by the way.
Great, thank you. Director Dinstedt.
I am present. Good morning.
Good morning. Director Roten.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Director Rizvi.
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. Good morning. President Gardner.
Good morning, I am here as well.
Wonderful. President Gardner, you do have a quorum today.
Okay, thank you very much. This brings us to public comments. Did we receive any written public comments by the deadline?
Director Gardner, could we move back to the pledge?
Oh, yes, we should. Absolutely. Excuse me. Micah.
I'm Ryan, and I am the Creative Service Specialist 2 in Strategic Communications, and I have been here about 2 years now with Western Water, and I'm going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Micah. Thank you. Okay, now we'll do public comments.
Thank you, President Gardner. At this time, we have no requests to speak, and I've received no written comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Brings us to the consent calendar. I understand that Director Roten would like to pull one item. If you go ahead and mention that one, Director.
Certainly. Yes, I would like to pull item 5D, the legislative platform principles and priorities. I know that we did review this in committee, but I thought it would be helpful for the public to hear the presentation on that so that they can know how we feel about those things.
Okay, we will do that. Does anybody wish to pull any other item? And if so, please say so. And if not, I'd look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
The remainder.
Second.
Without the item D, we move to approve without item D.
Okay. Motion was there a second?
Yes.
Okay.
I seconded.
Motion and second. Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, Tammy, would you please call the roll on consent calendar minus item D?
Just one moment. Thank you. Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0 for items 5A, B, C, and E.
Okay, Mr. Hadley, for item D, please.
Good morning, President Gardner and members of the board. My name is Michael Hadley, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as your Government Relations Officer at Western Municipal Water District. I manage your legislative and external affairs programs here for the district. So with that, why don't we jump into a very familiar PowerPoint that you remember, our 2023 state and federal legislative platform and priorities. Next slide, please. So what we're going to talk about is the purpose and overview of the legislative platform and priorities, the process for legislative engagement, and our 2023 top legislative priorities. Next slide. So as we move into the purpose of the platform and priorities, it's pretty straightforward, but our legislative platform is really the foundation for where we develop it's the why to our legislative program. It's why we have positions on certain things. It's kind of our foundational document for taking positions on legislative bills. It also gives us the ability to move quickly on certain bills that may be moving at a really quick pace. A lot of times there's maybe a 2-week window between different deadlines on the state legislature, so it allows us to take a position on a bill in between meetings that may happen outside of board meetings or what have you. So it also gives us a bit of transparency when it comes to the public. So the public, if they see our name on a legislative document, they can, why are we taking a position on a piece of legislation? What are we doing? They can go to that document. It's on our website, and they can figure out why we are taking a position on certain things. When it comes to priorities, this is more specific as far as what positions we take on certain ideas, but it gives us direction on an annual basis to develop those priorities and give us direction. It gives us the authority to take positions on behalf of Western without having to regularly come back and get permission, which again goes back to the platform where it allows us to move quickly. And then also incorporates a lot of, it's an annual document that gets it's a document that gets updated annually. So it brings in past legislative session, what those priorities are, as well as different associations and what they're predicting for the future of that year. Next slide. So again, kind of a high-level overview of the platform priorities. We do our best to try and write it as in plain language as possible, which is a difficult task when it comes to legislative issues. The legalese can get very challenging, but we do our best to write in plain language for ourselves. It offers a detailed description of Western's legislative platform. Again, I've kind of touched on these things, but for the priorities, we separated them a couple years ago into state and federal priorities. So they used to be in one document. It's kind of confusing, but now they're two separate documents. And then it again gives us the ability to support or oppose legislation without having to regularly come back to the board. Next slide. So the process for legislative engagement, a lot of you may be wondering in the public, how do we do this? So we first, anything that gets sent our way, or if I feel like we should be taking a position on behalf of Western, the general manager approves all letters, including coalition letters. So even recently we got asked to join a coalition letter on SB 23, which is AQUA-sponsored legislation to streamline permitting when it comes to drought and flood risk projects. Those go through the general manager for his approval. The letters are always addressed from the general manager. Anything that's not specifically laid out within the legislative platform does come back to the ComGov committee for the board. So anything where there might be a conflict of interest, or we're just not really sure what direction maybe we should take on something, we can come back to the board. Again, the legislative platform receives an annual review and is updated as needed, but only updated as needed, whereas state and federal priorities are updated always annually. Next slide. So our top legislative priorities, I didn't separate them into state and federal priorities. I kind of put them together into general categories of what our top legislative priorities are looking at for this coming year. It's to advance legislation that sets statewide new water supply targets. We've talked about this a lot. SB 366 is something Western feels strongly that would achieve this. Our second one is significant water and wastewater infrastructure investments, including projects such as Delta Conveyance. per and polyfluoroalkyl substances regulations, or PFAS. Protecting of local revenue sources. We know that a lot of times when the state has a deficit, they sometimes look to local agencies as a potential revenue source. And then increasing outdoor conservation through removal of non-functional turf. Again, that's a focus really on outdoor irrigation when it comes to conservation, not indoor. That's our fifth priority for the year. Next slide. With that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay. Are there any questions from board members?
I don't have any questions, but I wanted to thank you for the presentation, and if it's the appropriate time, I would move the item.
Okay.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Okay. Would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Torres? Director Torres, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Director Dinstead?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Do we have anything to add to the agenda?
We have no items to add to the agenda today.
Okay, thank you. Brings us to our action agenda. The first is consider adoption of Resolution 3269, supporting a U.S. Bureau of Reclamation grant application. Dr. Matlock.
Hey.
Before Melissa gets started, I want to remind the board that because of the timing of this, it is coming straight to the board. It was a verbal item that was discussed at the Engineering Operations and Water Resource Committee on the 30th of January. But Melissa is bringing this resolution directly to the board, requesting support.
Great.
So Western is requesting $200,000 from the United States Bureau of Reclamation's Water Smart Water Recycling and Desalination Planning Program. Big mouthful. But that's for our recharging recycled water and groundwater desalter expansion feasibility study. So this is actually a different grant opportunity. It's not for construction, it's actually for planning. And one of the benefits of going after this type of grant funding is that at the end of the day, we'll get a product, if awarded, that would allow the Bureau to approve a feasibility study. And the importance of this is that this opens up Western to additional grant funds through Title 16 or the WIN Act, which are really, you have to meet certain criteria to be able to qualify for those larger grant funds. And any projects that come from the feasibility study would be able to get and potentially apply for those different grant funds. So it's really a long-term strategic goal that ties in Western's priorities with local supply development. And a grant application is required, and the application's due at the end of February.
Okay, any questions on this one?
Just a comment. I had the pleasure of going to the Met Retreat here just Monday, had dinner with the commissioner, Touton from Bureau of Rec. So she talked about all of the money that's out there that she wants to support and bring back to California, and she's very serious about that. So she let us know that the government is there and they've got their purse strings open and ready to send off to us. So I'm super excited that we're getting this done, because her commitment to us was that this money is going to be coming. So perfect timing, perfect timing. Thank you. And Mr. President, if there's no other comments or questions, I'd like to move this item.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Is there any public comment?
There is none.
Okay, any questions or discussion before we vote? Seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Torres? Director Torres, you're muted. There we go.
Yes.
Thank you. Director Dinstead?
Aye?
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much. Usual excellent job.
Thank you.
Okay, 7B is to authorize the general manager to execute an interagency financial contribution agreement with the city of Murrieta to secure $7.4 million.
So I'll be taking this item. Steve, can we have the map brought up? While Steve is bringing up the map, I want to recognize and acknowledge that Ivan Holler, the Assistant City Manager with the City of Murrieta, is on Zoom. He's with us virtually. It was Ivan, myself, as well as legal counsels from both sides that put this agreement together. The board will remember that we brought this to the Engineering Committee back in December 5th, discussed the opportunity to partner with the City of Murrieta to take $7.4 million that the city had secured in ARPA, federal ARPA funding, and reduce the cost of infrastructure in the Murrieta Innovation Zone. The map on the screen, the red outline shows the area of the Innovation Zone that has been dubbed by the City of Murrieta. The green and black dashed lines are Western's existing infrastructure, and the blue dashed lines are future infrastructure that these ARPA funds would partially offset. So the $7.4 million would be divided into 3 categories of funding. It would be used approximately $1.4 million, $1.45 million would be used to pay the annexation fees to Metropolitan Water District for the properties in this area that have not yet paid their fees to annex to Metropolitan. Another $1.85 million would be used to buy system capacity in the Rancho California Water District system. Through a monumental agreement that this board authorized last year in May of 2022, we entered into an agreement with Rancho California Water District to purchase capacity in Rancho system as well as storage capacity in Rancho system to deliver imported water from Western's imported water connections that serve Rancho to the south of Rancho California Water District. So paying into the facilities at Rancho would be about $1.85 million. The balance of which leaves about $4 to $4.1 million of the 7.4. This would offset the capacity fees that pay for infrastructure. We estimate that it's about $11 million in water infrastructure that needs to be installed in that area. The agreement also has a provision where we will partner with the City of Murrieta during the construction of the Madison Avenue roadway. It's the main street running, I guess that's north-south. North-south, you can see it on the map there. That would open up the ability for Western to place water and sewer infrastructure at the same time as the roadway is constructed in that area. There'd be some economies of scale, and it would be a benefit to both parties. At the time we delivered the presentation in December, the agreement was in draft. Legal counsels from both sides were still working on it diligently. We did spend some time ensuring that we were using the ARPA funds appropriately. Legal counsel has confirmed that. The City of Murrieta legal counsel knew that, in fact, early, but it was Western's legal counsel that had some questions, and so we worked that out. I'm happy to report that the changes in the document before you today are non-substantial. There are some changes, but they were not substantial in nature. So with that, staff is seeking the authorization to let the general manager execute this agreement. It went through the city council last week. Both Director Denstedt and myself were present at that meeting. The city council wholeheartedly agreed that this was a positive step forward and authorized the staff of the City of Murrieta to enter into this agreement. So with that, I will take any questions and remind you that Ivan Holler is also on the line. So if you have questions that I can't answer, maybe Ivan can answer those. And I see Holland Stewart on the line now too. Holland is Deputy General Counsel, and he was instrumental in getting this agreement put together. So.
Okay, let me start with Mr. Holler, see if he would like to add any comments before we open it up to the board.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be present for this item. As Tim indicated, our city council unanimously approved this agreement, or this proposed agreement with Western last Tuesday. It represents a unique opportunity, one that is not likely to come again. that would benefit those residents who do live in the area and currently are on wells or on-site wastewater treatment systems by allowing them at some point in the future to connect to municipal potable water. So from that standpoint, it's certainly a plus for the city of Murrieta. And in addition, because you can see by the map, or as you can see by the map, this area is largely undeveloped. And part of the reason for that is the lack of infrastructure. So this would significantly improve the development potential here. And because this area is currently designated as innovation zone, these are actually employment lands for the city of Murrieta. So there's a number of benefits that come along with it. I'm pleased on behalf of the city to be a part of what I think is really an historic agreement between two water districts to be able to provide this service, and have appreciated working with Tim Barr through this process. And I am happy to answer any other specific questions that you have, but we, the city, are fully in support.
Great, thank you very much. Director Denstedt, I suspect you may wish to say something and maybe make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I actually would. I was, just like Tim said, I was present during this vote at the city on the 7th, and the former mayor, also Jonathan Ingram, was present, and we kind of had a mini celebration after this fact. So Jonathan and I, along with several other members and water districts and the community that came together, we started this venture back in 2015. And that's how long it's been to try to figure out solutions and get to answers and figure out and find funding and do all of those things that are going to just be beneficial to everybody. So the Innovation Zone will be on its way to what the city hopes for it to be a premier spot for some of the techie groups that are out there that are looking to land and find a home and build and bring some really interesting ventures forward. So really looking forward to that. I know that the chamber, I talked to Patrick Ellis as well, and he's super excited that this is happening too, because now he can really start pushing some development and some things that are, people that have been really looking at this area and bringing their business here and some of the technology that will come with it. So I'm very, very pleased that the City Council voted and approved this unanimously. And with that, Mr. President, I absolutely would like to make that motion to approve.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay, we have a question from Director Roden.
Just more of a clarification. So in looking through the supporting documents, Exhibit B is a reimbursement agreement, and I've seen things, I think, similar to this that come through like as a draft form, but for some reason this says sample, and I wasn't quite sure. It looks like it was probably a document back from 2016. I just wasn't quite sure what it was.
Good catch. So in 2016, the city of Murrieta and Western partnered on the Ivy Street Bridge, and that's the sample in there. What the agreement does is the agreement calls for a partnership agreement for the Madison Avenue project. So we will have to come up with another partnership agreement between the city and Western to deal with the Madison Avenue that will be coming forth, and the exhibit that you have there is just a sample of what that may look like.
Okay, so that'll come forward.
Yes, in
Later.
the future.
Okay, thank you.
One question.
Yes.
Okay. So I saw in the agreement that the deadline for those ARPA funds is December 2026. When do you anticipate to start building so we are we're built up by that date?
So the timeline that the city has for Madison has it well within reach of 2026. We will begin the annexation process effective immediately. We've already talked about a kickoff meeting. We have talked about our Strategic Communication, the Public Information Officer at City of Murrieta, working together to reach out to these folks. So we will begin spending money immediately on annexation, then construction, as well as the buy-in for the Rancho system. So we'll meet the deadline.
Okay, all righty.
Great.
That's about it.
Any other questions? Is there any public comment?
I see none.
Okay, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Rizvi?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye, and congratulations to everybody. This really is a historic kind of an arrangement. It goes back to the agreement with Rancho, and it will solve a number of problems, so well done.
Thank you. The motion carried 5-0.
Absolutely. And thank you, Ivan. Appreciate you being here today, even if it was on Zoom.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, it brings us to reports. We'll start with General Counsel, Mr. Ballinger.
Yes, Mr. President and members of the board, I've provided hard copies of BBK's annual update to legislation that affects local agencies. As you'll notice, as you read through it, the legislature was very busy this last year. Most of the legislation that we focused on has to do with housing, which doesn't directly impact us, but it certainly does indirectly impact us in terms of our provision of water to that housing. A couple of bills to note. One is SB 1439. It's referenced in this material. That is the bill that now requires campaign contributions to be disclosed if they're over $250. Also prohibits locally elected officials from soliciting donations of $250 or more from parties who have matters that are pending before the public agency. And then it also creates a conflict of interest for those contributors who've contributed $250 or more to a local official. Previously, these rules only applied to you in your appointive capacity, and as the board will recall earlier, last year, the board actually got ahead of this bill and applied it to yourselves even before this bill did. And so now the bill kind of conforms to what we were doing. The tail that it has in terms of the time period after voting on a particular matter within which you're also prohibited from soliciting donations is 12 months under this state law, whereas our ordinance only had 3 months, which is what it was under the previous state law. So the state law is going to prevail, and that longer 12-month tail is going to apply to you as local officials. So keep that in mind. If you have questions, please let me or staff know about in terms of implementing that. There was another bill relating to agenda items and written material that becomes available after the agenda is posted, but before the actual meeting. The Brown Act now is going to allow us to post that to our website as opposed to just making it available physically. So that'll provide another opportunity for us to provide transparency to our residents and customers. And then again, as the board is aware, AB 2449, which was discussed at the Engineering Committee, amends the Brown Act to provide for teleconferencing, and the board is not taking advantage of that. I'm seeing other local agencies follow suit because of the complexities of AB 2449. Once again, we're kind of setting a trend there. So that's my report. Again, if you have questions about any of these bills or any bills that aren't listed in here, please feel free to let me know. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Ballinger?
I do have a quick one. I'm sure it's in all this amazing information that you've given us, but the very first one, I think you said, is it SB 1439? Is that the number?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's the one that deals with campaign contributions creating conflicts.
Okay, so the, must be less than $250. Is there a time period for that, or is it annually, or like if someone wanted to donate $249 in 1 year, and then can they donate $249 in another year, or?
So it doesn't actually create a prohibition against donating more than $250. What it does is it says if you do receive a campaign contribution from a source over $250, and that source then comes before the board, within 12 months after making that donation, then you need to recuse from participating.
Oh,
So it's not a campaign contribution limit. Instead, it's more of a kind of, creates a recusal requirement.
okay.
So it's a 12-month running clock on that piece.
Correct.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
And it's only for a matter that would come before the board for a board action, is that correct? So if someone applied for and received service through the normal process, dealing only with staff, that would not count, is that correct?
Correct. It's only when you are acting in your official capacity. So either as a board member or if something comes before a committee.
Right.
Most things that come before a committee ultimately make it to the board. But yes, if there's a decision that impacts one of your campaign contributors that doesn't involve any action on your part, only involves district staff, then that is not, this bill is not implicated. You don't need to recuse, you don't need to disclose. It's fine.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. Sorry, I had my hand up. I didn't realize nobody.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
It's okay. My quick, you know what, I'm gonna scroll because I can't see Jeff and would like to see when he answers, but, oh, he doesn't have a camera, noticed. No, I didn't know that. So my question is, who do we need to report to? Is it just the FPPC? Is it to the district? Wait.
Good question. So the reporting obligation is when the item comes before the board or if it came before the committee. So similar to what board members are required to do when they recuse for other reasons, other economic interests. When the agenda item is called, you would announce you've received a campaign contribution by this party within the last 12 months. So then you recuse and leave the chambers.
And this takes into effect, I'm guessing January 1st, or is that?
Another good question. It goes into effect January 1st, 2023. There was some question about whether campaign contributions that were received before January 1st, 2023 triggered these reporting and disclosure and disqualification requirements. The FPPC rendered an opinion in late 2022, before the bill actually went into effect, and opined that only campaign contributions after January 1st, 2023 will trigger these requirements. So elected officials are encouraged to keep track of contributions January 1st, 2023 going forward.
Thank you. And then just my last question is, does this apply for the seat that you're running for? For instance, Director Rizvi was seeking another office, so would she have to report those contributions, or would it be, for instance, her reelection? And this is just an example.
Yeah, that question's been posed by other elected officials. Our opinion is that it applies to any campaign contributions, irrespective of what office those campaign contributions came in for. So whether it's a state seat or another local seat or the Western board seat, any campaign contribution over $250 or more triggers these obligations.
Okay, those were my only questions. Thank you, Jeff.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, we will move to the general manager's reports. Mr. Barr.
I will report that the general manager is not here, so the deputy general manager will file a report here in a minute, but I'm going to ask Ryan to come on up and do the water supply update, and he is tag teaming with Grace Cardenas as well. So when Ryan is done, he'll hand it off to Grace, and then I will have some comments afterwards.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tim. Good morning, President Gardner, members of the board. As always, I hope you and your families are doing well. I feel like the last 3 years I've been in front of you every month giving you bad news with regards to the drought. So today I'm very excited to give some positive news. And as Tim mentioned, I'm going to share it with Grace. All right, starting statewide. On the left-hand side, I think you've seen this graphic before. Obviously, that's a picture of California. by county, and the color scheme shows the drought status. And we wanted to include this today because it's the first time, in I think over 3 years, that we don't see the red and brown colors on there. That's the severe and extreme drought status. So that's really good news statewide.
Good job, Ryan.
Right? I made it rain.
Thank you for
right?
that.
Yeah, I wish. On the right-hand side, going locally, Santa Ana Watershed, you've seen this one before. The kind of the blue outline is the average, and then that purple line is the rainfall that we've seen so far this year. So it's looking really good, but you'll notice right at the top, it's kind of leveled out a little bit, meaning it hasn't rained in the last couple weeks, but fingers crossed, it's only mid-February. Hopefully more rain will come. Northern Sierra precip and snowpack on the left-hand side. You've seen this one before, but to focus on this year, the blue line, again, is the precip up in the Sierras. Again, looking really good, above the average, but again, you see that little tick to the right, so we've kind of leveled out just a little bit. Right-hand side is snowpack. It kind of ranges depending on where you're looking, but it's about 150 to 200% above average, which is really good. So fingers crossed that keeps going. So this is a new slide. We stole this from the state. Blue is good, red is bad. Starting from the top left, October 2021, all the way to January 2023. If you recall, last year, October, December, we had extremely wet months, followed by the driest 3 months on record in the history of California. So we wanted to point that out because December, January, and so far looks really good this year, but we don't want to count our chickens too soon yet. So the drought is not over, but we're looking really good. Big 6 mega reservoirs up and down the state. I think we showed you this one last time. Shasta, Oroville, Trinity, San Luis, New Melones, and Don Pedro are the big ones that deliver water from Northern California all the way to Central and Southern California. And on the left-hand side, you can see a time scale in terms of percentage full of these reservoirs. Percentage-wise, it doesn't look like a lot, but it's hundreds of thousands of acre feet that have been captured and put in these reservoirs, so it's pretty substantial. Still below the normal, which you can see at the very bottom, 66% of normal, but we're getting there. It's looking good. Keep your fingers crossed. Mother Nature keeps working with us. Okay.
Ryan, let me interject just for a second on this one. I think this is a really important slide to pay attention to. Despite the record rainfall we have had, we are still behind normal for this time of year. And it troubles me that people talk about the drought is over. You see it on television, and it clearly is not. And the charts remind me a lot of last year. It looked great, and then it flattened out, and we ended up dry. And that could still happen this year.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, I don't want to steal Grace's thunder, but I think the messaging point is we're looking good, but the drought is not over.
Exactly.
And that'll be hard for customers to fully grasp and understand.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
So what can we expect from State Water Project for 2023? Left-hand side, you can see a huge jump for January, 365,000 acre feet is what the state plans to move. And you can see the difference between October, November, and December, a huge increase. On the right-hand side, you'll see Lake Oroville and San Luis obviously have jumped up dramatically, 2.2 million acre feet in Oroville, 633,000 acre feet in San Luis. And just a minor note, it's kind of hard to see on the graphic, but bottom left, you'll see a green arrow showing ocean water coming in towards the delta. So the state annually always has to balance with the environmental requirements, biological opinions, how and when they can move water through the delta. So they call it a first flush, but They actually have to let a lot of fresh water go out into the ocean initially, but they are moving. You'll see their state water project pumps they're maxed out. They're moving all the water that they possibly can. Just a couple fun pictures here. It's always nice to see snow in California. And just a couple highlights. It's statewide, right? You see LA Times, San Francisco, so it's all the way up and down the state. And as somebody who grew up in Southern California, I don't think I've ever seen snow on Smokey the Bear there. The picture in the middle, I really like that one, Fire Danger Today. It's always been in the orange and red, at least in my recollection. So we thought we'd share that one with you. A little bit of a summary slide here. State Water Project, 1.27 million acre feet is what they plan to deliver this year. Metropolitan is about 50% of that, so 600,000 acre feet. That's a huge number compared to the last couple of years. I already mentioned snowpack is nearly around 200% above average. I think everybody already heard the big news from DWR. State Water Project allocation went from 5 to 30%. That's a huge increase. What we're hearing from Met is that it will likely go higher in the next couple months, but we'll have to wait and see the results of DWR's snow surveys. Usually they do that at the first of the month, so March 1st, April 1st. So probably in April, we'll have a real good feel of what that allocation will look like. DWR also just developed what they're calling a interagency task force. So Western is participating in that, along with water districts up and down the state. As you know, we're aggressively continuing to pursue grant funding. Climate change, drought resiliency grant funding is all over the place. Melissa and Michael are all over that, so we will continue to do that. The last big ticket item that we've brought up in recent years, water supply allocation plan. This is Metropolitan's potential plan to make cuts for agencies if they don't have enough supply. So even as recent as last month, we were thinking they were still going to implement that. I think they're kind of on the fence now with all this water, especially from the state water project side of things. They're kind of debating internally how much should they deliver directly to us, customers, versus putting some of that water back into the storage up and down the state banking programs that they have. So even though the water supply situation is looking really good, they still might do some level of an allocation. But again, that'll probably come in April, so we'll find out soon. And if that does come, just a reminder, we are well prepared. We've got all the documents, planning, conservation efforts, all the infrastructure for local supplies in place if and when Met does put in that allocation plan. I think that's my last slide. Happy to answer any questions or let Grace take it over.
Questions for Ryan? How's he?
Water.
Yes, I'm like, just thank you. Since I've been on the board, this is the first good positive report I've seen. So keep doing the work. Good job.
Thank you.
It's been a really good day. Melissa makes it rain money. You make it rain wet. We'll take it.
Okay, good morning, board members and Western staff. I'm Grace Cardenas, Strategic Communications Manager. So I'm going to briefly go over some of our outreach and engagement efforts. You'll get a more robust presentation at the next ComGov meeting. If you tuned into our social media yesterday, we did some Valentine's themed posts there, and you will see that our relationship status with our water supply is complicated. And it really is complicated. Next slide? Oh, there we go. Do I say next slide or do I do it up here? Either way, okay. So we've We are aware that the messaging challenges of rain and drought. However, we feel it's an opportunity to educate our customers on water supply, where their water comes from, the systemic statewide infrastructure challenges, and then, of course, our Solve the Water Crisis efforts. So we're really capitalizing on the fact that water is top of mind for people and it's in the news. Next slide. Oh, sorry, can you go back really quick? Some of our messaging strategies include being timely, relevant, humanizing Western, and just understanding that it is a confusing topic for people. And so we're just calling that out in a lot of our messaging, along with targeting water conservation. Next slide. So we've done a lot of social media outreach. We've posted heavily about the drought and rain since January. And so we're repurposing a lot of our email campaigns into bite-sized digestible pieces on social media. We're also using a mixture of tone. We want to be humorous at times, serious at times, and we know that that tends to reach more people in that way. Next slide. We're still putting out our Drought 411 emails when something significant happens. The last time we did this was at the end of January. So we've waited until the rain stopped and then quickly put out this Drought 411 email so that people aren't guessing what we're asking them to do. It's really clear, and they have information live about their water supply. That Drought 411 email had a 53% open rate, which is well above industry standard at around 25%. And so we feel that being timely has been really effective for us. We're also still assisting Craig in his general manager updates. So we do those about monthly to the member agencies and partners. Next slide. Yes, so this is a video featuring Josh Aguilar. I just wanted to show some of these short informational videos that you'll start to see as we continue to roll out more information on social about the drought.
I
We started the
was warned
calendar year with our reservoirs up and down the state not in great shape. Typically, we see our reservoirs at this time of the year about 63% full. However, currently, even after these torrential storms, we're only at about 50% full. So if you think about it in terms of a glass, the glass is half full. There's no way to predict what the rest of the winter will bring, and that underscores the importance to continue to conserve. And Western is here to help you save water and save money if you look on our website.
So again, that just, should I stop?
Yeah, I was warned that technology will take a minute to move back and forth to the video.
Come on, Steve, hurry it up. Tell me when. Okay, so this just underscores, again, we have some of those humorous drought campaign videos. These are our more serious informational style videos. So we're doing everything we can to reach our customers in a variety of ways. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there questions or comments from board members?
No questions, but comment. I love it. I see it every morning. I'm looking at what's new, and you guys are doing a great job. So thank you. It's working really.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Grace. I've got two updates that kind of tag along with the update there.
Please.
First one, on Monday, the governor signed an executive order N323. It speaks to the 2021-2022 experience where the precipitation in October and December was high, followed by the 3 months. Ryan showed you that slide where the 3 months were the driest on record. Driest in 100 years is what the executive order said. It focuses on the fact that we had the wettest 3 weeks in January 2023, again on record, and in February we're already seeing a drying. So the administration, although there is 205% of average snowpack on February 1st, it is still trending towards a dry period coming up in front of us. So the executive order seeks to protect water storage supplies in case of the rest of the year remains dry. However, the executive order, in my opinion, is a little worrisome because it seeks to protect the salmon and the steelhead and wildlife before it protects water quality and before it protects the water supply to the Department of Water Resources. It talks about simply just providing and maintaining minimum health and safety requirements. So that's a little disconcerting, to be clear about it. In response to the executive order, the Department of Water Resources and the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation submitted what's called a temporary urgency change petition. And this is designed, it was submitted to the State Water Resources Control Board. It's designed to protect up to 700,000 acre feet that, because of decisions that were made in the 70s and the late 1990s that do not adequately represent the conditions we are faced with today, this whiplash of atmospheric rivers and then dryness. In order to maintain water quality in the Delta, there may have to be a release of a substantial amount of water. Well, the Department of Water Resources and the Bureau of Reclamation have submitted a temporary, what we'll call a restraining order, to say, hold on, don't necessarily do that. The State Water Project, and I should back up and say that I was not aware that this temporary petition was going to happen, and Director Gardner reached out late last week and said, hey, I'm hearing about this temporary condition, what's going on? So he had his ear or his fingers on the pulse of what was happening in water, and we followed up on it, and sure enough, yesterday this occurred. In response to the executive order, the State Water Project contractors released a statement that I'll read in a second. It cuts to the heart of California's long-term problem and is in lockstep with the efforts of Solve the Water Crisis Coalition and the California Water for All legislation that Craig, Sarah, and Michael are working so hard and making some significant progress on. The Jennifer Pierre, who Craig quoted at the last board meeting, I'm going to quote again today. She says, we are grateful that the water flowing through the Delta is sufficient to meet all the beneficial uses, but we must invest in infrastructure and establish operational rules that are better able to respond to our changed climate and hydrologic conditions. Implementing the voluntary agreements, Delta conveyance projects, strategic storage projects, and science-based flexibility in our management are absolutely necessary to ensure adequate and reliable water supplies for California's people and the environment. So again, the State Water Project contractors, many folks across the state are in lockstep with the effort that we are pushing in Solve the Water Crisis and now in the legislation 366. So that kind of tags onto the water supply update. Last item I have is in Murrieta. I want to give kudos to our operations team. They're doing in an ongoing effort to ensure that Western Water delivers the highest quality water and exceeds all state and federal standards. The operations team over the next 2 weeks is working with a no-des filter system. You may recall we did this a couple of years ago. They are going back and doing neighborhoods that were missed in the first 2 slots, as well as neighborhoods that have potential sediment buildup issues, and they're doing a great job. The outreach team was coordinating the outreach, and all is going as planned. So kudos to our team to look out for the water quality that we serve. So that's all the updates I have.
Great. I do have a question. I don't know whether you want to take it or give it to Michael, but can you describe for us SB 366 and what it does and who's behind it and who's carrying it?
Sure. Actually, I'll turn that over to Sarah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director. And I'll also invite Michael Hadley to come up since he is sitting on CMUA, which is the California Municipal Utilities Association strike team working directly on the bill language. So Western is really well represented and directly involved in the bill's development. And really what the bill does is it seeks to do 3 things. One is to modernize California's water plan. This is really to give accountability to the state to invest in the statewide system that we all rely on. And number 2, to set statewide water supply targets to shift the mindset from scarcity to abundance. So right now, we've really been focused on conservation and local supply reliability, and this would essentially assess California's water supply need for all uses, including environment and communities, along with agriculture, and then require the state to come up with a plan both a financial plan, a project plan, and a scoping plan to meet those targets by, say, 2050 as an example. I want to turn it over to Michael, who's been working in detail with a large committee on this and might be able to offer a few more insights on how it's being developed.
Certainly. So the bill is being authored by Senator Ana Caballero. She's out of the Central Coast region of California. She's been a big water proponent for a long time, so she's a very strong author in the opinion of CMUA. But right now, if you Google or research the bill right now, it's only intent language, which just means it is the intent of this bill to reform the California Water Plan and include statewide water targets. So it's kind of general right now. The strike team has been hammering out the language within it, trying to make that right. A lot of it is hinging on a study that's going to be conducted by an academic institution. We're finalizing that now. So once we have that study, we'll have a legitimate place to start justifying the actual water target itself, what it means. We've floated around the idea of 20 million acre feet. That's more of a back of the hand napkin. We know that's going to be challenged when it hits the legislature in official language, so we are hoping to back that up with some more academic studies behind that. So that should be out in the next probably month or so. Since the bill is in print, it can't be amended until March 11th. So after March 11th, we can expect to see something more substantive come out from the legislature, and we're going to make a big deal out of it. So we're working with KP Public Affairs and Senator Caballero's office to make a big deal out of it. So as we develop those details, we'll be sure to share that with you all. But with that, I'm happy to provide any other details as you'd like.
I would just point out that this bill is a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the implementation of Solve the Water Crisis.
Certainly.
I joined several of our senior staff for CMUA's Legislative Day a week or so ago, and there are a number of legislators who have offered to co-author this bill. They see it as important. We met with, I think, all of our local legislators, or at least their staff. For the ones that I was involved in meetings with, everybody is very sensitive to this and supportive of the concept. I don't think we'll have any difficulty helping put together a strong list of co-authors. And everybody that I was involved in conversations with thought that it was a really good idea and that it should pretty much sail through the legislature because it doesn't cost a lot of money right now. It just requires the state to put together a plan and an implementation schedule, and it will deal with the implementation and the specific things that would be constructed or modified to create this 20 million extra acre feet on a project-by-project basis, and it would all happen through Department of Water Resources. So it's really a planning directive, but it was very well received by a pretty broad range of legislators from pretty far left to pretty far right. So I think we're in really good shape with this. It's nice to have CMUA carrying it. They are well respected. They do good work, and they don't take on a whole lot of things in any one legislative year. So this is kind of their big one for the year, and that's important to us. So congratulations to everybody who's involved in this. I think it's going to be good.
Absolutely.
And we should be able to get it out, I think, this year as a one-year bill. We are in the first year of a two-year legislative session. Bills that don't get through the first year carry over to the second year. We don't want to do that. We want to get this in place as quickly as possible.
We've delayed long enough. We need to get it there now.
So it's moving really well.
Absolutely.
We should all be proud.
Thank you, Michael.
You bet.
That's it.
I have one question. Tim, would you be able to have someone send out that, the narrative on the executive order so we can actually kind of delve through it. And I wasn't sure if any other part of your report, if you had anything in writing. I was scribbling furiously, but I know I missed some things.
I'd be happy to send you the executive order and my notes on the executive order.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions or comments? Okay, director's reports. SAPA did meet on February 7th, took a couple of actions. They renewed their contract with West Coast Advisors as their state legislative representative. And the PA 24 committee, what did PA do? Approved a contract with Woodard and Curran for almost $400,000 for professional services for the preparation of the Inland Empire Brine Line Reach 4 and 4B condition assessment. That's an older section of the brine line, and they need to find out how it is holding up. The brine is a bit corrosive to many materials, and periodically they need to assess the status of the pipe to avoid spills. I did ask, Craig had pointed out to me that SAPA has never taken a position on Solve the Water Crisis, and so I asked to have that put on the agenda. I believe that it will be on the agenda for next Tuesday's meeting, and I will be making a presentation to SAPA, educating them a bit and asking them to be a supporter, and I think they will. 4 of the 5 member agencies already are, so I don't see a real challenge here.
You are scheduled on the 21st, and we have a PowerPoint for you.
Okay, great. MWD.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, it was an interesting couple of days. We ended up having a special board meeting. There were some new members that were welcomed from agencies that will be replacing people, so that it's been kind of interesting. I talked to staff while I was there, and we've had a lot of Met directors do some change. I think there's been at least 10 people that have changed since I've moved, which has really been unusual in the cycle of things, because when you get to Met, you really stay in place for quite some time and significant portion of years, and the turnover has been kind of high. So it's kind of interesting to see that change and some of the questions and some of the direction that brings, because it's kind of a learning curve once you get there. The other thing was Glenn Peterson was given his 30-year service pin. So he's been around for a long time. I had the opportunity to sit next to him during the retreat and have some conversation with him, and he knows everything about. He was letting me know that his very first day 30 years ago, when he started at Metropolitan, they voted on a 21% rate increase. And that was his memory coming forward. So that was kind of a shocker, because if we saw that today, I think we'd all need to get the paddles out and defib us back, right?
I hate to say how old I am, but I remember that.
Oh, Lord. So scary. That's scary stuff, though. That's scary stuff. So, but that was the culmination of combination of them not doing any rate increases for a number of years and then having to suffer the consequences of having to do something and do a large jump. So there was discussion about the benefits of doing incremental increases along the way, which is obviously what finance staff really likes, to be able to anticipate what that incremental increase is going to be and keep it as level as we possibly can, rather than doing these great spikes and valleys. So we got it, but kind of interesting conversation. The retreat was really interesting. I liked day 2 much better than I liked day 1. Day 1 was a little challenging.
Is that because our general manager was in attendance instead of me?
No. It was just the way that the information kind of rolled out and the way that they did the whole presentation. What was really great about day 2, and Mr. Barr was at day 1 and Craig was at day 2, was the fact that they really covered and went over the surveys that they did with all the member agencies, with all the directors, with the general managers, to talk about what it is that is really of a priority, so that we could really sit down and focus on what our priorities are with Metropolitan. Where do we really need to concentrate our efforts, and what kind of conversations do we really need to be having? And it was interesting to me that with all the conversation that's gone on with DEI, with the state audits, with a couple of things that have really been at the forefront, almost every single member agency out there with the interviews with the directors and the general managers wanted to get back to talking about what our priority mission is, and that's delivering water to Southern California. And one of the interesting things that were kind of pointed out during this whole conversation was the fact that we now have all these committees, and there's been some changes and some moves and some shaking with committees. But out of the 8 primary committees that have now been in place, only 1 is primarily focused on water. And so that has been an opportunity of discussion as well, to say, now that we understand what the focus needs to be, we're expecting a document to come forward that's going to list out what our priorities are. They're going to be sending that out, I'm understanding, today or tomorrow, to allow us to look at the draft document, to opine over that, and to have it to discussion, so that before we do any type of adoption of that policy. So I'm really pleased to see that my colleagues on that board really want to focus back to our primary mission and the delivery of water to Southern California. The other thing that happened too was the fact that we did get an update in closed session. So because we are a member agency and we have signed on to a joint agreement of defense on this with the San Diego litigation, we probably should have a closed session agendized in the future to discuss what those issues were and bring Mr. O'Neill back to give us an update as to where we sit on that, since I can't do that in open session and we have that joint agreement. So I'm able to bring that in once we have that on closed session. So I think it's really important for you guys to hear kind of where we sit, so we can have an informed discussion. So
we will make sure that happens.
Okay, that would be really good for us to be able to do. And then the other thing, I think, as we discuss water and bringing this back to the priorities and everything else, I really think it's time that Western send a letter. I think the ask is that we authorize the general manager on behalf of the board to send a letter asking for us to be able to do a presentation on Solve the Water Crisis, and ask Metropolitan to hear that, to give the opportunity to that board to jump on to the Solve the Water Crisis, because Metropolitan, the largest water agency in the country, has not taken this position. And I think it's time, given the fact of the conversation that took place at this retreat. So I think it would also be really appropriate to forward what our legislative priorities are along with that letter, so that they can see what it is that we have put into play, what we've adopted. We've spent a great deal of time, energy, and effort in putting that document together. And I think it's really critical that we share our position with Metropolitan, and because these components all go together. And so I think it would be appropriate to send those types of things over, and I will defer to my colleagues if I can get a level of consensus on that, that's an appropriate thing to do.
I think it's necessary. Disagree?
I guess my concern is that I'm sure Metropolitan Water District is aware of our efforts, and if we have not been invited to give this presentation, there must be a reason why, and we should probably find out why that is.
President Gardner, because this is an update, it probably wouldn't be appropriate to get consensus at this point, but we can certainly bring it back for discussion.
Okay, and that's fine. And if you don't ask to go to be a part of something, I don't think that the ask has been there, so I think it's absolutely appropriate. Other agencies have sent letters asking for metropolitan support, and I think it's time that Western do the same. So,
We'll bring it back through ComGov and then to the board as appropriate. Great.
absolutely. So I'm fine with that, but I really think it's time, so. And with that, I will keep you updated as to when we get all of this documentation. All the presentations and everything are being made available to us. I'm understanding in the next, today or tomorrow, it should be available and sent to us, so we can certainly send that information out to you as to what actually took place at the retreat and give all those presentations that are coming forward, because they should be very informative. But I'm happy to answer any questions, should you have any.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
So prior to the retreat, Metropolitan asked the member agencies to, and their board members, their representatives, to bring their priorities to the retreat. So we sent out a request to our retail agencies and assembled those and armed Director Denstedt with a set of priorities going into the retreat. So I think it's important to just state that we got information and the desires of our retail agencies that submitted something. So.
And to your point, Tim, I did share that document with my working group, because we were broke out into 6 different working groups, and everybody was very impressed with that and wanted us to make multiple copies to send it out to everybody at the retreat. So next time, send me with a packet of copies, because everybody really liked how we mapped that out and the time and effort that we put into that in preparation of this retreat and talking about exactly what those priorities are, so that we could voice our concerns across the board with everybody that we represent.
We have a great team here.
Absolutely. So thank you to staff.
Director Rizvi.
Would you mind to share this with those with us? Of you? Okay, thank you.
I would just point out that Director Denstedt's request that we ask Metropolitan Water District for permission to present on solve the water crisis, to me makes sense. When I spoke to SAPA about, you've never taken a position on solve the water crisis, and they said, you've never asked us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And one other thing too, I did have the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with our new auditor that came in, Mr. Suzuki, who came in from Orange County and is now joining the Met family to be our auditor and our direct report for that department. It was really interesting because he does not come from a water background. He was at the county of Orange to do all of the stuff within that government organization. And to listen to some of his perspective, he sat there for that 2-day retreat and had no idea what goes into what we all do on a daily basis. And it was really interesting to have a conversation and that kind of him jumping into the deep end, essentially, of finding out and watching everything that we were talking about. So just very interesting conversation.
Great. Okay, Chino Basin Water Master meets next week, but of significance, some of the members of the appropriative pool had challenged whether Chino Basin Water Master could include some costs for an environmental review in the budget without approval of 100% of the members of each of the pools. That was denied by the trial court. It was appealed, and this week the appellate court ruled that, actually, what was challenged was whether the work was something that needed to be done by the individual participants, the individual members of the appropriative pool, or by Water Master as the overseeing agency. And the Court of Appeal said, yes, Water Master is the appropriate party. So that's somewhat significant, and it happened faster than was anticipated. So read into that what you want, but the courts seem to have dispensed with the latest fight amongst the parties. Chino DeSalter.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited because this is my first official report.
Yes.
For, as the appointed person and not an alternate. So Chino Basin DeSalter Authority met on February 2nd, and basically, it was interesting because they do a swear-in, so I had to be sworn in for that board, which was different, at least for me. And then, of course, you know, the typical minutes and the local emergency proclamation. One of the things we did vote on was a cost of living increase, 7.3% for all CDA employees. That passed, I believe, unanimously. And then we had 3 different contract awards that went through, and a couple of emergency information items, one of which was the discussion about the Brown Act requirements going forward and how we were going to handle that, which is reminding me that I think I was supposed to answer a survey. I might have already done it. I will have to go back and look at that. But there was discussion about whether we wanted to meet at the Ontario City Hall, which is, I guess, is where they previously met, or if we wanted to meet at the CDA offices, but I guess it's kind of a small place. And so, to be determined. Also, it was brought up that, like, so say the Norco representative, they could post the meeting easily at the Norco City Hall, and he could take the meeting there on Zoom on a regular basis, wouldn't necessarily have to go in person. So apparently JCSD does not have that capacity, which was my understanding, because Betty Folsom serves on this too. And I thought, oh, we could just go to JCSD, but at least at this point, no. So that was really it, and I really appreciated, and I don't know if this is, I'm going to be meeting with Craig in a couple of weeks to kind of get an overview of CDA and, you know, bring me up to speed on the expectations. But I really appreciated getting the staff recommendations as far as the agenda items. That was really helpful, especially being that I was, you know, first time to the meeting and didn't really have a lot of background. So that was it.
Great. Thank you. Rikra.
We will meet next week.
Okay. WRCOG.
Yes, WRCOG. So a lot of stuff is going on with TUMF. We don't have a dog in that fight, so it's not something that we really need to worry about. We did approve a class and comp study that's been quite some time in the coming for doing some job descriptions, some comparisons across the board, and meeting those requirements. And there was some adjusting that needed to be done for people and what their job description says and what they're actually performing. And so some adjustments had to be made. So we went ahead and approved that classification and comp and made those adjustments. And then for the remote meetings under the AB 2449, WRCOG has elected not to enact upon that. We're going back to the 1988 rule. So the old rule will continue to apply. So if you want to take the meeting from outside of the location, it's going to have to be posted if you wanted to do that here at Western or down at any one of the cities that participate in that. So they're sticking with the old rule. They're not going to do the new rule. Everybody agrees so far, it's just complicated. And so going back to old school. And then, of course, General Assembly will be coming up in June, and we're still working on doing all that. We have, my understanding, the speaker is in place, so that will be good. And for next month, we are going to be doing and talking about the strategic plan that we did a lot of work on, and that document will be finalized and voted on and discussed at the March meeting. So if you have the opportunity to take a look at that or are curious or interested, that should be posted here in the next week or so for you to be able to peruse should you want to opine on anything. Other than that, Mr. President, that is all I have.
Great, thank you. Sarah?
We were dark this month, so we will meet next month.
Okay. Aqua representative.
Region 9, we're still looking forward to doing the program here at the Salton Sea Tour. That's coming up in the end of March, so we're working on doing any tweaks to that program and getting things done. And then we're going to be talking about the Aqua Conference coming up for May.
Okay, director's comments. I'll start with Director Torres.
Thank you, Mike. I have just a quick update. I was able to attend the Latino Network this morning, where they did ask that we present the Solve the Water Crisis presentation. They had not heard of it, and there are several organizations represented there, as well as legislative leaders that were very interested as I gave my update. So if there's, obviously staff can work it out with me. I'd love to be able to support in that. And then just lastly, give I want to pay my condolences to the students at MSU who suffered another school shooting this week. Sending my thoughts and prayers to their families. And those are my updates.
Okay, thank you. Director Roten.
Oops. Yes, just a few comments. This past Saturday, I logged on for the Master Gardener Western, I don't know if it's called the gardening series, but the topic was harvesting gray water. And it was really interesting. The gal that spoke has I guess you'd call it a consulting business of some sort. So she explained there were like 3 main ways that we can approach that in our homes. And she kind of gave an overview of each of them. It sounded to me like the easiest one is probably your laundry, if you want to harvest the water from your washing machine. So some of it, like so many water things, was way beyond me. But I mean, and she's showing diagrams with pipes and pumps and all of this. But I just thought it was probably kind of a cool thing that there are folks that are willing to, that have a real interest in this. Like the washing machine ones, it sounds like most anyone could probably handle that. But going much beyond that, and then putting the ditches in your yard and then the mulch on the top, and it was overwhelming to me. But I thought, good for those other folks that want to do this. So it was really cool to know that information was out there and that it is legal to do that. And then, I wanted to thank the board on February 9th for attending the JCSD Awards Luncheon. That meant a lot to me to have you all there. I really appreciate your support, and I think it's one of the things that makes our board of directors unique and special is the support that we give each other. So thank you very much for that. And just a brief mention that I did attend with the Monday morning group. It was our Sacramento Advocacy Days from February 5 through 7. I actually ran into our staff members. It's so funny, that whole place, and then you happen to run in at the exact same time to people that you know. It's like, that was so weird, but fun. And we had a lot of good meetings. We just had our debrief this morning. In fact, we didn't even get through it all because there was a lot of discussion, but I do serve on the water committee. I may have mentioned that in the past. And so I had the privilege to attend just about all of the water meetings with Director Randy Record from Eastern. And he is just, it's really, I've met him in passing, but never had the opportunity to spend that much time with him. And his knowledge and history and professionalism, I mean, he's just, I felt like a student, you know, that was trying to just take all of this in. So I really, really appreciated his experiences, who the relationships he has with folks. And so because he has those relationships, the meetings were, for a number of them, very comfortable because they like knew each other already. And so my ears were all focused on water. We advocate on quite a few issues, but my main focus was, of course, the water issues. And although Solve the Water Crisis was not necessarily mentioned by name, the components of it were parts of the discussion. And there were one or two people that I was able to reach into my purse and get my little card out for. So I did pass that along to them. But I was thinking there was one more. Oh, one of the things that Randy did that I was really impressed with, and I want to make sure that I have the information the next time I get the opportunity to do this. There were at least 3 of the meetings that we had where he thanked the person that we were speaking with for grants that they had received. And I don't have that up in my head, so I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do that. I need to find this out, because it was such a great approach. It was very welcoming. It set the tone for the meeting, and you know, he was very appreciative toward them, and we're appreciative when we receive those, and appreciative to the person that writes those for us. So I just want to make sure, you know, food for thought for future, that I make sure I've checked in and have that information with me. We will be going to DC at the end of April to basically do the same thing at the federal level. So that was it. I just wanted to share that.
Okay. What was the award that you received from JCSD?
Oh, gosh, Mike, thanks for asking. It was the 2022 Don Galliano Water Champion Award. And it was the inaugural award for that purpose. So I was very honored.
Yeah, richly deserved, and a good recognition of Don Galliano and his contributions to have this award in his name.
Yeah.
But
And a couple of
congratulations
his-
on getting it.
Thank you. A couple of his family members were there too,
Yes.
so. And thank you, Michael. Michael was there as well. So, yeah, so that's all.
Okay. Director Isby.
I want to congratulate Laura for the award. It was wonderful being there. Your speech was amazing, and having, Director Galliano's family there, it was a very good event for being an inaugural event. It came out. It was very windy, but we all survived. So congratulations, and it was well deserved.
Thank you.
Director Denstedt.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. Yes, I also attended the award. That was really great, Laura, but the Desi House.
Isn't that amazing?
The venue, that was just an awesome venue that kind of unexpected in the middle there, and getting to tour that facility and just see everything. It was really, what a great venue. So if we ever have an opportunity to be able to use some of that space over there.
The executive management team has had leadership retreats there, and one of the great things about the partnership with JCSD is they didn't charge us for the use of it. So.
Nice.
No, no, it's fantastic, and that's what they're really wanting to do. They're wanting to promote that facility and talking with their staff over there and seeing some of their directors. So it's a great facility. So nice that they had that award there for you. I also attended that night. I got to drive all the way out to Orange County to go to the MODOC dinner, the policy dinner. And that was an interesting event. It's always well attended, you know, seeing people from around the region so that we can all sit and talk, and made a number of connections with other directors from other agencies, from El Toro and from a couple of other places. So that was really great to, you know, just to get to see some people that we haven't seen. And everybody's really excited to just now be back in person and not miss things because it's on Zoom. And you just don't get to have those connections the same way. So really great to be able to go and do that. And I think that is all that I have to talk about on my updates. So thank you.
Okay. My report, I think I largely gave. I did attend the CMUA Legislative Day, met with some legislators and staff. It was a good and productive day. We did not get a chance to talk to Assemblymember Cervantes, but as it happened, I flew back from Sacramento with her. So there was a little conversation. And that's it.
Very good.
Any requests for future agenda items?
Yes.
Ma'am?
I would like to find out if I could, and this is in whatever committee we can do, but can we have a conversation about when all this stuff is going to get updated? Because we've been working on that for a while and waiting, and I know there were some equipment challenges and some things, but we've been talking about doing an update and upgrade on our audio, video stuff for a while.
Staff is working on it, and if you'll give us a couple of months, it's going to take us a couple of months to bring something back through committee and board.
Yeah, just want to see where we're at with doing this, because, you know, this, Steve knows when this cuff was put in.
In all fairness, the costs have come out exponentially higher than what we budgeted for, so we're trying, staff is going through it and looking at what the opportunities are and how we can proceed.
And that's
So we
kind of
wanna do
what
it in a
I was wondering.
cost-effective way.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering is, are we getting hit with an extreme spike
Everything's expensive.
in cost? So, okay, thank you. And that's all I had, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay. Any others? All right. We do have information items. As usual, anybody have questions or comments on those? If not, our next meeting is March 1st at 9:30 here in this room. We will see you all then, if not sooner, and we will be adjourned. Thank you very much.